This holiday season is going to be unique. COVID cases are on the rise, and we're faced with new normals as families across the nation are adapting to these unprecedented times. As such, entertainment is a welcome relief from the pandemic. So I sat down with Brian Kenney, executive producer of Milwaukee PBS's MATC student-produced television program, Letters to Santa, and discussed with him the program, its place in Milwaukee's community, and its decades-long history. Join me and learn how students were challenged by and overcame COVID to ensure the decades-long tradition of Letters to Santa continued.
My name is Brian Kenney. I am the executive producer of Letters to Santa for 2020.
For those who weren't aware, Letters to Santa airs every year on Milwaukee PBS Channel 10. This year's program, in fact, will be airing December 21st through Christmas Eve, the 24th, at 2 p.m. each day. I asked Brian to give a brief summary of Letters to Santa.
Letters to Santa it might be Milwaukee PBS's longest running show. I think it's been going for about 40 years. The majority of the show traditionally is just Santa reading letters from kids in the community. So in a normal year, we would have a bunch of kids on set, and then they come up and they sit in front of Santa while the show goes on, and we shoot this live. And then they get up on Santa's lap when he reads the letter, kind of like Santa at the mall. There's going to be Jolly, the postmaster elf, at his desk at the North Pole. And then in each episode, a different elf from the North Pole community comes in and has a conversation with Jolly as they wait for a package. Santa comes in at the beginning of the episode and at the end, and he collects his letters from the post office and then goes back to his den to read the letters.
While Letters to Santa airs on Milwaukee PBS, what makes it unique is that the program is produced by students who are in the TV and video production program at Milwaukee Area Technical College. Every year Letters to Santa airs, students are getting real-world experience with broadcast television. The production really is quite an accomplishment, being professionally produced by students who are learning. It can often be a student's largest project they'll produce throughout the program. I asked Brian how long they've been working on this year's show and how it came together.
We've been working on Letters to Santa, I think, since about late September. So that was 6 or 7 weeks ago to this point. And then a lot of it up until last week was just pre-production. But yeah, it's been a long process, a lot of things changing minute to minute. We really started out imagining we would be shooting the show like we did previous years. And I think it was about the second or third week in that we got notice that probably wasn't going to happen.
Brian reflected on where he began as a first year in 101 to now becoming executive producer.
I worked on Letters to Santa as a first-year student. Mike Olin, who was the executive producer last year, had put out a notice for volunteers to come in and work. And I worked on at least 2 episodes, if I remember correctly. First one I did, I think I was a camera person, and I remember they just kind of threw me on there and then didn't really give me much preparation for what I was going to do. And then that was my first interaction with Kevin, doing a post-mortem on it, and I got chewed out from my lack of camera movement.
That's Kevin Pulls. He's the instructor who runs the show, as it were, inside the TV program.
I feel like 101 sometimes feels like you're practicing, especially when you get to the second year. All that stuff you did in 101 feels like it was just kid play in a way, because these things, even though they're not maybe the production you would do in the real world, it is like that more. And so there is a lot more pressure, there's a lot more strict deadlines, there's a lot more pre-planning, and it is just a huge production.
Brian went on to tell me about how he felt having the responsibility of production on his shoulders, as well as the challenges he personally faced.
So then fast forward to doing this year, and having worked on a couple last year, I think I had a good idea what the Letters to Santa production was. I had managed people in the workplace before, but like this, managing students is a completely different animal. I'd say that from what I knew last year to seeing this year, like the biggest thing is just figuring out how to motivate people with this sort of longer term project and sort of keep everybody aware of what's happening with it, keep everybody in line. And that's probably been the biggest, most stressful thing for me, is just trying to keep everybody motivated, keep everybody on their deadlines. And I start to feel like a teacher after this because I'm scolding people so much about how I want them to hit the deadlines and things.
Being in the middle of a pandemic, COVID certainly posed challenges for Brian and the rest of the crew.
Production this year is quite a bit different from years prior, partly because it's not shot live. And it's still live to tape, but normally in any other year, it's a fully live directed show, start to finish, because really that is the big part of this program, is to kind of give you the live show experience. A lot of parents were nervous about having their kids in the studio. Even when we knew we couldn't have kids on the floor all together, we were still going to try and bring kids into the studio one by one, and obviously that couldn't happen after parents got real nervous about being in a strange place with who knows how many people. And with the current spike in cases in Wisconsin, as this is kind of paralleling our production, is this huge spike in COVID cases. So our trajectory was sort of changed by that as we went. We decided to change the kids portion to Zoom calls, and so I give a lot of credit to Seth Wasserman, who is the executive assistant, for handling that and making adjustments on the fly.
What else changed about the show?
The biggest other difference is doing more of a narrative style, and that was originally in sort of our first discussions, but it didn't really become part of the sort of stage production until almost 3 weeks before we began shooting. And that really is the biggest thing that makes this look different than previous years.
In case you were worried about the show feeling cold after the changes, this year's staff of students came up with a new segment to showcase the warmth of the Milwaukee community.
And we also have added a whole different element that wasn't in previous shows, which is this postcard element, which is just having people from the community record a short message or a memory about Christmas or a thank you to Santa. And that's, again, something that's never been done before in this show, but that's been a lot of trying to reach out to the community and get more involvement to make the show feel closer. I feel like that's what this show would have missed had we not done these postcards, is this sense of community and belonging that having a bunch of kids on the floor kind of gives you. So hopefully we've got some element of that back with those postcards.
Just what does Letters to Santa mean to Milwaukee PBS and its community?
I think it's sort of a fixture of Milwaukee PBS. It's been going on for 40 years or more. I think it's a great way for the community to see, what students in this program are doing. The execution is students, so it's not always the greatest, depending on the level of skills of the students doing the segments or just that crew that day. But I think that's part of its charm. It shows that there is a sort of up-and-coming group of people making this, and these students who are in this will go on to make other things in the community. And it's really sort of the stepping stone for a lot of the people that go through MATC TV program, is that they remember this because it's really the largest group project that you do in TV. We have these multiple episodes. We have 4 episodes this year. And so really, everybody kind of coming together, especially for those days we're shooting, and just kind of as a group making this thing and sort of pulling off what seemed kind of impossible when you're doing the pre-production of it. I've spoken to Hannah, who plays Amelia. They were so excited to be involved in this, partly because they grew up watching this program. They were aware of this, they'd seen it as a kid, and then for them to have an opportunity to make their mark on it, because the future classes will look back on this episode and they'll be like, oh, that Amelia thing they did with the green screen, I hope at least, everybody will look at that and go, that was so cool, that was so different. And that was, Hannah that got to do that. They get to have that little bit of fame. Also for the other actors on stage, I think that it's a great way for them to be seen. Hopefully Santa gets lots of feedback because he's really pretty awesome.
With COVID affecting every area of our lives, it has to be addressed eventually. So, I asked Brian, how did they handle producing Letters to Santa in the midst of a pandemic? And what the value of positive programming has in times like these.
I would say positive programming is really important. We had a lot of discussions about how we addressed COVID for this, and honestly, we didn't really talk about it. Obviously when you see the kids on the Zoom call, that obviously there's something different. You'll see the postcards, there's lots of these postcards that were done via somebody's phone or them at work because they didn't want a film crew or a video crew coming to their office to shoot one of these. But when we talked about how we address it, there was some discussion of saying we're doing this because of COVID. And in some ways, perhaps we should have addressed it more, but at the same time, I think just by trying to have fun amidst these conditions, I think that is enough of saying we are addressing it.
It seems as if a time like this is when a show like Letters to Santa is needed the most.
Some of the camera shots may look a little weird because people are socially distanced on our set, but hopefully people don't notice it because it's really the shame of COVID right now is that there's not a lot of productions being made. And it's hard to solve some of these social distancing problems. And I think the school has been so safe about this, and us as students have been so safe about this that it makes me feel like that really, it's a kids show. And kids seeing that and having us address COVID may have worked, but it wasn't something that we wanted to dwell on. Everybody knows that Christmas is going to be different this year, but people still want to have traditional moments, I guess it is, even if it's not being in person. So again, we kind of addressed it and then we actually just kind of left it in the background and didn't address it fully. Do the elves at the North Pole, are they experiencing this COVID crisis? I'm not sure. Do we want to say that Santa is so aware of COVID that he's addressing it to the audience? I don't know, but we still try to have a good, positive show.
By continuing to produce TV content like Letters to Santa despite COVID, aside from the masks, gloves, sanitizer, and distancing on set, you'd almost forget about the circumstances. I think it's safe for me to say the students and staff who produced this year's show hope the program can provide a moment of solace for its viewers, if even for just a moment.
There's so much about COVID out there that I think a lot of people are a little bit, they want some escape, and especially kids might want some escape. And seeing why we're doing stuff like that, I think kids being on school on Zoom and stuff, they'll kind of inherently understand it because that's kind of their lives right now too. I really do think that people need sort of fun programming amidst COVID, even if it's just to forget about COVID for a minute. Every time you turn on the news, it's there. And so I think just to have that program that comes after that and says, we're still making stuff, we're still here, we're still having fun, whatever that looks like, but just have a bit more of levity amidst sort of all of the struggles with it.
What can viewers expect by tuning in and watching this year's Letters to Santa?
They'll see more of Santa's community. All of our segments are, or at least the majority of our segments are devoted to elves. And the storylines kind of revolve around the elves that come in to talk to Jolly, learning a bit of a lesson about Christmas in some way, whether it's about like teamwork and how that's important in just daily life, but also important in making the holidays happy. There's a thing about just what the magic of Christmas might be, things about just how talents can be a gift you share. You know, it's more of the thought that counts, and how I think some of the segments in that episode deal with a little bit of a Grinch sort of character, and how they're unhappy now because they got a bad gift, and how that's really not the way you should hold grudges on Christmas, or that it's really that somebody's looking out for you and they should be more inspired by what they're trying to do for you, as opposed to the materialistic aspect of it, I guess.
Letters to Santa airs Monday, December 21st through Thursday, December 24th at 2 p.m. each day. Many people put many hours of hard work into producing Letters to Santa safely. Whether or not you celebrate Christmas, if you're home while it airs, turn on the TV and watch this year's Letters to Santa. Thanks to Brian Kenney for speaking with me, and thank you for listening. I'm Dan Potratz. Take care and stay safe out there. Merry Christmas.